Is Vietnam a good place to live long term? Now, this is not the end-all and be-all analysis on living or traveling to Vietnam. It's just based on my experience because I've been considering heavily whether I should stay in Vietnam or live in Canada. And I've been back and forth to this country for several times now, varying from 2 months to 6 months. So I'm gonna give you guys an analysis based on what I think about living here long term. Okay, first of all, Vietnam is very diverse, which means you can rent a room in a house deep in an alley somewhere for $5, $10 a night, or you can rent a 5, 6 star hotel for hundreds of dollars a night. There's everything on the table here in Vietnam. You can eat at a mom and pop shop for $1 or go spend $50, $100 at a fancy restaurant. The people here are also very diverse. The younger generation tend to lean toward the Western culture. They're on Instagram, TikTok, and they're consuming movies from Hollywood. And now they are more open and more modern in terms of their thinking and self-expression. But in general, Vietnamese are very conservative people. They hold on to traditional values and they're very shy. So making friends with Vietnamese is not easy, especially if you don't speak any Viet. And that's the next point I have to go to, which is if you don't know any Vietnamese, it's going to be very difficult. I would recommend to learn the basics, at least if you're thinking about staying here for the long run. Number two, the basic cost of living here is quite affordable, which means comparing to Canada, US, or the UK, if you want to rent a place in Vietnam, is very affordable. It's about $400, $500 a month. So with the money that you save, now you can travel, do more activities, and even afford more healthy food. So I think this is a big bonus. You can take trips around Asia because instead of paying $2,000, $3,000 a month for rental, now you're only paying a few hundred. So that's a big bonus for living in Vietnam. I am very sick and tired of paying very expensive rent in Canada, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people choose to move to Southeast Asia in general and in Vietnam particularly. Number three is Vietnam is very walkable. Specifically, if you guys are living in a big city like Ho Chi Minh City, aka Saigon, District 1, 3, or Binh Thanh is very walkable. You can get around to grocery, bars, cafes, restaurants, and different activities quite easily. And if you don't want to walk, you can take a taxi or a Grab scooter. They'll bring you there really fast and cheap. And the best thing is you don't have to worry about parking. They just pick you up at your house, drop you off at the location, and then you go on your way. And typically a trip around Saigon is $2, $3. It's not expensive at all. The fourth thing is there's no winter in Vietnam. The weather here is quite mild, minus May and June-ish when it gets really hot, and around this time, August, September, when it gets quite rainy, especially when there's a typhoon coming around. If you guys heard, there's a big typhoon, hitting Vietnam, and it's affecting the economy and the people here quite a bit. But that aside, I like Vietnam because there's no winter, snow, or ice. In Canada, when you go out in the winter time, you have to clean your car, you have to clean your sidewalk, and then change your tire to winter tire in order to drive around safely. You don't have to worry about that here in Vietnam. If there's a lot of rain, you can always stay inside, do your work, go watch a movie, or you can also take the plane to the neighboring countries like Thailand, Cambodia, or the Philippines. It's quite cheap and fast. Number five is Vietnam is generally very safe. As a guy traveling here for many years, I feel quite safe. I'm not sure about the experience of a woman, but for me, even late at night, I walk around and I feel completely fine. The people are minding their own business. However, there are petty thefts like picking pockets or stealing phone. They could drive by and grab your phone and go. So you do have to be careful of these little things. But generally speaking, you are going to be quite safe if you live in central Vietnam. Number six, the people in Vietnam are quite nice and helpful. Now, mind you, they don't speak a lot of English. That's why it's good for you to learn the basic Vietnamese, or Google Translate would help as well because they are quite patient and helpful people. If you pull out Google Translate and ask them for directions or things to do, they'll happily stop and give you directions and recommendations. And that's one thing I really love about the Vietnamese people. And specifically for the Vietnamese women, they are generally very caring, loyal, and fun to hang around with. They are very shy and conservative at first, but if you make friends with them, if you're genuine, over the long course of time, they can open up and they can be very nice and funny, and they'll show their personality. And they're very helpful in showing you around the different neighborhood of Vietnam. And the Vietnamese girls, they're not the type to make you pay for everything. I don't find that there's many gold diggers here. Of course, there will be a few in every country of the world, but generally speaking, I do find the Vietnamese woman to be very genuine, and if you're looking for a long-term relationship, Vietnam is a good place to look. Number 7, Vietnam can be quite chaotic, especially with the motor scooters. If you're walking around, they'll be driving everywhere, sometimes in the wrong direction on the road. Sometimes they'll jump on the sidewalk. There's vendors selling right on the sidewalk, and trees, and people parking that you can't even walk properly. So that's something that you have to get used to and move around, and always be aware and alert to keep your safety when you're on the road in the public. Especially I was talking about the issue of snatching phone and running away. So you always got to watch out after yourself and then your belonging in order to stay safe in Vietnam. Number 8, I think healthcare here is quite good. It's getting better. I have found there's dentists, ENT, and even doctors that you can go to that are international standards. The price is very cheap and the service is professional. Everything is clean. You just walk in and get service right away. Sometimes in Canada, when I make an appointment, when I go there, I still have to wait over an hour. For example, the last time I went to see a dermatologist. But here in Vietnam, I booked a few appointments, and when you come, you get service right away, which is something I really love. Because the Vietnamese people generally go to common hospitals and clinics that everybody go to. So if you're a foreigner and you pay just a little bit more, you get really fast service. And more here is like $20, $30 for a checkup. It's nothing too expensive. Compared to the West, I think you guys can agree that it's pretty affordable. Number 9 is the service here can be quite inconsistent. Sometimes you're getting really good service and sometimes there's no service at all. But don't worry, generally if you're going to a modern shop like a cafe, restaurant that is geared toward foreigners, or in a very nice area like this in Nguyen Hue, you're going to get excellent service because the staff is very well trained and they match the international standards. Sometimes it's actually international owners and investors that come to Vietnam to open these venues. So when you go in, they serve you well beyond the service level that you can expect anywhere in the world. So there's some restaurant and cafes that I've been to that I feature on this channel. For example, like 4Ps, that give you really good service besides having good food and affordable pricing. So I think for the quality of the food and service you get, the price is quite good in Vietnam. A general advice I can give you guys is before you move to Vietnam permanently, come here, a few short trips and then feel it out. Stay in different neighborhoods, interact with the local, and try to learn their tradition and culture. Really deep dive into what the people here actually live like. Because recently I went to drink some coconut at a local shop, and I told the grandpa that was selling the coconut, it's so hot here, sometimes it gets so rainy. How do you deal with this? How do you live here? And he said, you know what, son? Here, if people have enough money to eat a meal a day, they're quite happy. They don't care about the heat, the sun, or the rain. And that struck me really hard because generally when you walk to Nguyen Hue or Bui Vien or these big streets and you see tourists splurging, drinking, doing balloons, fancy shops, you think that this is how Vietnam is like in District 1. However, if you go into the alley, you really know how people are living. Like the grandpa was telling me, you want to know the true lifestyle of the Vietnamese people, go into the alley. Some of them can't even find 50K dong Vietnamese a day, which is like $2 American a day. They find it really hard pressed to go find that type of money to feed their family. So it gives you a different perspective of exactly how Vietnamese people live. And he say, everything you see here is like a coat. The outer layer, you don't see the true Vietnamese lifestyle. So I recommend you guys to really try to learn the Vietnamese language, the culture, and their way of life. And this is the best way to determine for yourself whether or not you will be suitable to live here for the long run. Of course, I have an unfair advantage because I speak Vietnamese. I was born here, although I left when I was quite young, but I do understand the Vietnamese culture quite well. And knowing the language and being a very curious person, I always ask questions. And as a result, I get to learn a lot about the culture and become more and more Vietnamese as I stay here. And that's something I recommend you guys to have as well. Be very curious. And if you're an introvert, it's even better because if you sit there and you observe, over the long run, you can see a lot and learn a lot. But making friends can be quite difficult if you don't speak English, I have to say, because people here at the forefront, they can be very shy, very conservative. So even Google Translate won't help you here. It's just for general directions and recommendations. but to make friends and establish a circle here, it could be difficult if you don't speak Vietnamese. Just like anywhere, like Japan, Korea, you know, you do need to learn the language to some extent. Of course, there are expats here, but if you live in Vietnam, you don't want to just hang out with expats and foreigners. You do want to know some Vietnamese friends. Sometimes they can help you bargain. They know certain areas that are very unique and cool that maybe the foreigners don't know. So investing in yourself and learning more about the culture and the language, I think is going to be quite helpful in the long run. Alright guys, so that's my analysis. Overall, I love Vietnam. This is my top 2 places to live in the world. The second one being Canada, of course, the place I spend the most time in and the place I understand the most. For your circumstance, you have to really debate about, you know, does this fit your needs? Like if you have healthcare issues, your income level, are you working or retired? And any other needs that you have particularly, you have to live here and try different neighborhoods to really find that out for yourself. If you're married or you're single looking for a partner, that is a consideration as well. But thanks so much for watching the video. Leave below, you know, other things that I may have missed, and let's discuss if Vietnam is truly a good place to live. Thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video from Saigon, Vietnam. Peace out.